All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, in the history of the NBA, there have been some great pure scorers. Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, Bernard King, George Gervin, Bob McAdoo, of course, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant. But James Harden, for this era, is pretty much the ultimate scorer. For this era, with no hand checking, the either three-point shot or layup style that is promoted by NBA GMs and coaches and the quote-unquote cognoscenti, what he does, what he brings to the table in this era is as devastating as any offensive player I've ever seen in the regular season. In the regular season, let me specify, because in the playoffs, he's a different player because he gets officiated differently. But for what he's allowed to do in the regular season, he is just dynamite. So the question then begs to be asked, how do we evaluate him in the overall hierarchy of the league? When we look at the NBA, we see great players like LeBron James and Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Anthony Davis, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Russell Westbrook, Kyrie Irving, so on and so forth. Where do we place James Harden? Because of how dynamic he is in the regular season, but we know that there's a drop-off in the postseason. I myself have to sit back and really meditate on that, because the potency that he exhibits, I really have to put him up there right now. I might even have to put him above Anthony Davis, not in regards to what he brings, but in regards to his impact. His impact in this style of play, I may have to put him up in that top 5 area, maybe 6, and that is what this debate is about. Because Max Kellerman does not believe that James Harden is a top 5 player, and as we've seen in previous videos, Max Kellerman is not high on James Harden. I understand why. He's not particularly proficient. And, you know, the LeBron James superfans, they always compare everybody to LeBron. And LeBron has mastered that style, that Oscar Robertson style of dominate the basketball, distribute, score, put up huge numbers. That's why I call LeBron James Oscar Robertson 2.0. And I call Russell Westbrook and James Harden lowercase versions of LeBron James because they're nowhere near as proficient, but they play in the same style. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
We're preparing for postseason. We're not going to be at our top tip right now, which is a great thing. So we got something to build to.
The Beards' 41 points last night were the second most by any active player on Christmas Day. It was also...
Look at Moses Malone. Once again, Moses Malone, arguably the most underrated player in NBA history. He's the greatest player that nobody's ever heard of.
It was also Harden's 7th consecutive game with at least 30 points. Only Moses...
A lot of people do not understand. There was a stretch in the NBA where Moses Malone was the best player in the NBA. Not the best center, the best player in the NBA. And he played at the same time as Kareem.
Moses Malone in 1981-82 has had a longer streak in Rockets history. Now let's get you back to First Take.
Damon Jones rejoining us here on the set with Ryan Hollins and, of course, Max Kellerman. I'm Jen Latta. Harden delivering his 56th career 40-point game in that win yesterday. Guys,
Let me also say this about Moses Malone before we get into this conversation involving James Harden. The league has always helped out its ambassadors. That's why I say Adam Silver will try to help out LeBron James. Because as we saw by those stats, Moses Malone was putting up huge numbers in the 1981-82 season. That was back when he played with the Houston Rockets. The year before the 1981-82 season was the 1980-81 season, of course, and they went to the finals. They lost to Larry Bird and the Celtics. The next year, he put up those huge numbers, and I believe he won the MVP that year. And then in the offseason, after he wins the MVP, the NBA finds a way to get him to the Philadelphia 76ers to help out Dr. J, who had struggled to win a championship since he arrived in the NBA, I believe in 1976, was Dr. J's first year, the 76-77 season. They went to the finals. They lost to the Portland Trail Blazers. Then they went back to the finals in 1980. They lost to the Lakers. Then they went back to the finals again in 82 and lost to the Lakers again. So the NBA found a way to help Dr. J in the same way that I believe they're going to find a way to try to help LeBron James by getting him Anthony Davis. So history always repeats itself.
I started hearing people talk about him in the MVP conversation again, Max.
Yeah.
Where does he rank among the best players in the league?
He's the 7th best player in basketball.
Stop.
Yeah, he's not.
He's somewhere around there. He's no higher than 5, though. Because top 4 off top is LeBron, KD, Steph, and Kawhi.
Stop. Stop. Now, He should be in the MVP conversation because it's idiotically a regular season award. The reason I say idiotically, it really makes no sense, is because...
No, it makes perfect sense because the NBA MVP is determined on what you do in the regular season. Now, the only reason why Max Kellerman is trying to argue for the MVP award being all the way from the start to the finish is because he knows that his boo thing, LeBron James, tends to make long runs in the playoffs.
There is no such thing as an MVP candidate who comes from a non-playoff team, because 16 out of 30 teams make it, so over 50% of the teams make it.
These people are so desperate, Max Kellerman, Rachel Nichols, these super liberal Caucasian Jews that work at ESPN, to push LeBron James so much. It makes you wonder, what is it that they know about LeBron James behind the scenes that they're such huge advocates for him? He must have some connection to them in some way, shape, or form. We know that LeBron James is heavily sponsored by the corporate Marxist factions, not only of the U.S., but globally. And we know that they tend to be heavily associated with the Kabbalistic aspect, what I believe is called, was it Tikkun Olam? Something along those lines. The Kabbalistic understanding of being a benefactor across the entire earth that so many of the super liberal Caucasian Jews embrace.
If you're an MVP, if you're going to win the MVP, you're going to be on a playoff team, almost without fail. So why don't we just at least see how they do in the playoffs before we start ranking them? How does Harden do in the playoffs? First of all, even in the regular season, it's not that he's a top 7 player in this league, is one of the greatest athletes who's ever lived. Like, I'm not down on Harden, but he is playing in a system.
No, Harden's one of the most impactful players in the league in the regular season. In the regular season, and the proof is in the pudding. Not only with his stats, but with his teams winning. The Rockets were a 50-plus win team multiple times before Chris Paul even got there. They got to the conference finals in 2015. They got to the semifinals in 2017. So James Harden, the proof is in the pudding that how he's played in the regular season has led to success. He's not just some shot jacker. So we have to give him a certain amount of credit. Now, he is a hard head. And when they get to the playoffs, he does tend to struggle against very intelligent teams because they know how he's going to play, and the referees call the game differently.
He's an extremely high-usage player who's playing in a system that will make him look a little better than he is. Just as Steve Nash, once upon a time, looked a little better than he was.
I would love to see the Rockets face off against the Lakers in the playoffs, just to see Harden go up against LeBron. That's going to be a great matchup because I do believe it's going to happen.
Just as Jeremy Lin, once upon a time, looked a little better than he was. Now, he's better.
This guy's really trying to compare Jeremy Lin to James Harden. Like, come on, man.
He's better than Lin. He's even better than Steve Nash, probably, which is a great Hall of Fame player. Harden's going to be in the Hall of Fame one day.
No doubt about it. James Harden's going to go down, even if he never wins anything, he's going to go down as a top 40, top 30 player, somewhere in that range, like around 35, 36.
His defense has gotten much better, but let's look at the best players in basketball. Is he LeBron James? Stop. Don't answer that question. It's rhetorical. He's not close to LeBron James.
Well, he's not LeBron.
Let's talk about the others. AD, KD, and Kawhi, and the Greek Freak. These are...
What about Steph Curry? This guy's such a big fanboy. What has the Greek Freak done thus far in the NBA that we can put him above James Harden? What has he done? Look, I know that he's a genetic anomaly. He literally is a so-called freak. His dimensions, his hand size, his speed, I get it. But he has to do a lot to jump over James Harden, a player who not only has been highly impactful for the Rockets, but who was highly impactful for the OKC Thunder while he was there. This person, James Harden, has got to the finals as a member of the Thunder. He's gotten to the Western Conference Finals multiple times. The Greek Freak has yet to get to the second round. Let's let Giannis get to the second round first before we start talking about him above James Harden.
6'7" and better, long, great two-way players. Like, they play great defense. Harden's defense is not in their league.
LeBron James does not play great defense, sir. Sorry.
So even if you want to argue his offense is around as good as theirs, or if even...
And let me say this once again about Anthony Davis. I don't care how good your big man is. In this era, I don't care how good your big man is. If you don't have great shooting and great perimeter decision making, you're not going to win in today's NBA. And just to be quite honest with you, when I look back at the history of the NBA and we look at all the great big men, because we've always been told that it was a big man's league. How many big men have won without great perimeter players? The only one that I could think of is Hakeem Olajuwon. And he was able to do it in the one season where there were really no other teams with more than one great player on the team. Now, the Utah Jazz had two great players, but John Stockton was not a standout athlete. So he was somebody that back in that era where you could be very, very physical, he could be nullified by swarming defenses, even though he was great at executing. But that one season, the 93-94 season, there were no other teams that had two unbelievably dominant players, because that's just how the NBA was back then. When we look at all the other great big men, whether it was Kareem, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, they needed a great wing. So, I mean, even back then you needed a great wing. Anthony Davis, as great a numbers as he puts up, how impactful is he in today's NBA? He has not been that impactful. Now, we'll see what happens when Peyton comes back, because I think that'll make a difference. That'll help out Drew Holiday. That'll move everybody over a slot. That'll take a lot of pressure off of their backcourt. But to me, in this league, Anthony Davis is a great beta. He's not a great alpha.
Even if you want to argue it's better, which I would say you're wrong, but okay. If your offense is around the same, you want to give one guy an edge, but the defense isn't close, then who's the better player? And finally, and by the way, Steph Curry, between Steph and Harden, you're taking Steph. Stop it. Now, finally, you have to include the playoffs.
At least you mentioned Steph, and yes, you do have to include the playoffs. Why would you make a playoff argument when Giannis has not done anything in the playoffs, and neither has AD until last year, at least in regards to winning the series?
It's a 2-month playoff. The MVPs all come from playoff teams. I am rooting for James Harden. I saw signs that he's getting better under pressure in these last playoffs. But the bottom line is he is still worse than he normally is in the playoffs. His performance is here normally. It goes way down in the postseason. I'm sorry, that counts against you. It simply does. We can't pretend it does. Those are the highest leverage games, and there are lots of them. Game 7 at home against Game 7. You'll know when I'm done.
Tell him, Max. You'll know when I'm done, Negro.
Game 7 at home against defending champs. Your second best player not on the floor. You went 2 from 13 from outside, and that's why you lost. So defensively, it doesn't.
Hey, it happens, Max Kellerman. Kobe Bryant once shot 6 of 24 in the NBA Finals in Game 7.
Doesn't add up, and playoffs it doesn't add up. 7 is great. He's not higher than that.
We know LeBron, we know Steph. That's not in question. But the rest of the guys you put on the list, from a playmaking standpoint, from a value standpoint, listen, when James Harden's not on the floor, that team, when he hurt his hamstring, goes down to 12th. Now they're 7th in the West, as thick as the West is. You got to understand how hard it is to have the basketball in your hands and create. Not only does he lead the league in scoring by average of 3+ points. Who's the second closest guy? Averaging 29. He's averaging 32 points per game. Guess what? He is the system. Mike D'Antoni changed and adjusted his system.
That's true.
From the pick and roll, backdoor, pitch ahead, pistol offense to a matchup based
one-on-one offense. That's very true.
Individual ISO offense for James Harden, which he's efficient at. And if you don't switch the matchup, which he's so good, if you don't switch, he's throwing lobs all day or getting layups. That's a fact. So he's a playmaker. None of those guys, after LeBron and Steph Curry, can actually create offense for others. And as far as the playoffs, I was down on James Harden. But after the playoffs, he showed me something. Because
he showed you while you was at the end of the bench watching with a pair of binoculars on, right? That's when he showed your ass. When they came back from down 3-1 in 2015, right? Ryan Holiday, he talked like he was out there on the floor battling with his no-playing ass. Look, at the end of the day, I agree a little bit more with Ryan Hollins, but I can't put James Harden above Kawhi, and I can't put him above KD. I just can't, and I get his point. James Harden is a playmaker, but what does that say? That he can only play in that way? I believe that if you ask Kawhi to average 8 assists a game, he could. If you ask KD to give you 30 points and 9 assists per game, he could. But could James Harden play in the Golden State offense where you had to constantly move without the basketball, where you had to catch and shoot? I don't think that he'd be very comfortable with that.
For one, he lost to one of the greatest teams that ever played a game of basketball in Golden State. Hurt, injured, or whatever, however you want to manage it, and he became a winner. Why do I say James Harden became a winner? Because he stepped up, because he defended.
I agree with that, and as I've stated, I have to give James Harden credit. I stated that I would stop calling James Harden James Hardhead after the 2018 playoffs if his team was able to get to the Western Conference Finals and, get eliminated in 6 or 7 games and he was competitive. Sometimes I slip, I have a relapse, I still call him James Hardhead. I apologize for that. But at the end of the day, I do have to give him credit, as Ryan Hollins has stated, that he did prove last season that he's a great competitor.
Defended. If you actually watched the game, if you actually watched the series, which I don't think you did, they pressured James Harden to take away the 3-ball, and they forced him. That's how good he was. They forced him to drive the basketball. And when he drove the lane, he finished with dunks. He hit 13 threes. He hit the two. Hey, guess what? That's what playmakers do.
I have an argument.
That's what playmakers do.
I have an argument for both people. Okay? Ryan, to your point, okay, Max, he leads the league in total points. He leads the league in threes made. And he leads the league in free throws made.
Damon Jones look like your uncle at the barbecue complaining about the hamburgers being too burnt. Why your wife always leave the damn hamburgers on the grill so damn long? Shit. I'll be back.
Okay. So from that standpoint, offensively for the Rockets, he is their bread and butter. Okay. CP's out and they went on a hell of a run. And they're back in the Western Conference race. Okay, so I say that to your point. Now, Max, to your point. He had 1 game to win out of 2. Chris Paul went out game 5, at home.
Yeah, but to me, the criticism of James Harden is not last season. If we want to criticize James Harden, we could look at the 11 turnovers in I believe it was Game 5 of the 2015 Western Conference Finals. We could look at how he melted down against San Antonio in 2017. That's what we look at. I don't look at last season. To me, last season they maxed out.
They go to Golden State for Game 6.
I don't look at your season as a failure if you max out.
They come home for a Game 7. And if you're the MVP of the league, you have to get your team to the NBA Finals. Okay? So when
No, if you're the MVP of the league, you have to win the finals. But we know why you're saying get to the finals, Damon Jones, because your boy is LeBron James, and that's all he does is get there. He don't win. So if you say if you're the MVP of the league, you have to win the finals, it's going to look bad on your boy LeBron. Continue on.
So with that being said,
2 on 5, 2 on 4.
What
2 on 4?
With that being said, I have James Harden, 6th best player in the league.
Outside of the top 5.
He's around there. I would give James Harden the benefit of the doubt. I will put him at 5 because of what he's accomplished in the playoffs and in the regular season. I can't put AD above him right now, even though AD, I think, brings a lot more to the table. I mean, it depends. It's debatable. But what I've been seeing from James Harden over the last couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, have given me an additional amount of respect for his contributions.
So I have him 7, you have him 6. So what do you have him?
You mean that he's number...
Colin Cowherd put up a great stat the other day, though, in reference to James Harden and Russell Westbrook. He showed the highest points scored for the month of December for the past 5 years. And it was James Harden, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. In other words, what he was trying to convey is that those players are regular season players. They're December players. They put up those huge 40-point triple-doubles all throughout December. And then they get to the playoffs and they're finished. They're done. Because they only play at one speed and they can only play one way.
Number 3, Lisa. You mean to tell me AD's going to lead a team past Golden State? You mean Giannis, who can't close games because he don't have a jump shot? No.
That's your best point, brother. You should stick to that point because that is a great point. I have no idea how Max Kellerman could bring up the playoffs when neither one of those 2 players have ever done anything in the playoffs.
Who's the other guy?
This is what I'm saying to you is they had the best record in the NBA last year.
Okay.
They had home court advantage.
Yeah.
Okay, and you get home court advantage to do what? To get the Game 7 on your home floor.
Yeah.
Okay, and they had 2 games. They were up 3-2 going to Golden State for Game 6. Okay, and they were winning at halftime against Golden State.
You know who else lost? You know who else lost to Golden State? LeBron. You want to know why? Because
LeBron lost because he just made to lose to Golden State. That's why he lost. Anytime he faces a team that has a high overall basketball IQ, he's going to lose. And the only time that he's been able to defeat a team that had a high basketball IQ is when miracles had, like literally miracles had to happen. That being the Ray Allen jump shot, the Draymond Green idiocy in Game 4.
Because there's not 2 and 3 LeBrons. There aren't 2 and 3 James Hardens. You know,
just need
against,
one.
in the regular season.
Ryan, hold on. I understand all your points. You're making a bunch of mistakes here, though.
Well, the main mistake that Ryan is making is that he made the Giannis Anthony Davis point about the playoffs to Damon Jones and not to you. He should have made that point to you, and he should have made you answer the question.
Oh, well, you are right that James Harden is very good at doing very difficult things. Even in certain respects, the most difficult things. But that doesn't make you the best player. Like, you still have to get the results. And if you're running a...
Right, well, what have the results been for Giannis thus far?
You're running a D'Antoni system. Even if he changes his system for you, he's a very creative offensive mind. We have to acknowledge that. Even the defense was better when they had Bizdelic there. And Harden's defense has improved, and I agree. He got better under pressure last year. But when the emotional leader of the team, Chris Paul, went down, Harden missed every shot, basically, and so did the rest of his teammates miss every shot. A leader has to, why did they fall apart without Chris Paul? It's not just the talent missing. It's that James Harden's team, everyone, they had one of the worst shooting performances of all time from outside when they needed it most. You know what you do then? The leader of the team has to put those guys on his back and...
Right, but you know another reason why the Rockets failed in Game 7, Max Kellerman, is because of people like yourself, the analytics stat geeks, who tell human beings how they're supposed to function on a basketball floor like robots. You know what? When your legs are tired down the stretch of Game 7, don't take a couple of dribbles in and pull up from 15 feet or 16 feet, to make an easier jump shot. Either pull up from 27 feet or try to drive the lane and finish at the basket. And when you do that, you're putting your legs under the greatest amount of stress because it's hardest to take long-range jump shots when your legs are tired or to drive the lane and finish over defenders. But when you take that mid-range jump shot, that will take into account the fatigue of your legs. It's easier to make a mid-range jump shot when you're tired than it is to make a long-range three-pointer or to drive to the basket and be able to finish over defenders in a Game 7 when you're not going to get every ticky-tack foul call. But because we live in an analytics age when it comes to the NBA, these players are forced to take shots that they can't make because if they don't, the stat geeks and the so-called genius coaches are going to castigate them.
LeBron can't beat him? LeBron's ahead of him, but LeBron can't beat him, and you hold that against him?
Time out.
Look at the game that Kawhi Leonard had a couple of nights ago where he scored 45 points. Who were they playing? He scored 45 points on somebody. It was a relatively good team they were playing at home. The Utah Jazz, that's who it was, the Jazz. And Kawhi was able to dominate in the mid-range. He was able to utilize a lot of those Michael Jordan / Kobe Bryant moves in the mid-range because it takes into account the fatigue that you're going to suffer from over the course of the game. The mid-range shot is an easier shot for players to make in the fourth quarter than the three-point shot or those hard drives to the basket where you know that you're going to be defended very aggressively, and in the playoffs you're going to have to convert. And you're not going to have the legs to leap over your opponent in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left. But because we live in an analytics era, these people don't factor in the human element.
LeBron went to Oracle.
Golden State.
LeBron went to Oracle against a Warriors team that won 73 games.
Here we go with that again. The Warriors won 73 games, and if you put the Warriors back in the 1980s against the Showtime Lakers, or the 1990s against the Bulls, or against Shaq and Kobe's Lakers, and they play under those rules, they would not have won 73 games. The Warriors were a team that took a quantum leap ahead of every other team in the league with their jump shooting. It's taken the teams across the NBA a couple of years to catch up. They've caught up now, and what we've seen is that the Warriors have incrementally decreased in wins every season because the other teams in the league are catching up. Quiet is kept, and nobody mentions this. You know who the favorites were to win the NBA championship before the 2014-2015 season? The Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, of course, they got to the finals. Kyrie and Kevin Love were both out because of injury. Fine. LeBron loses. It is what it is. They make excuses for that. That's fine. Even though many great players in history have lost finals because of injuries, but LeBron is the only one that we hear about. The next season, All right? Not coming into the 2014 season, coming into the 2015 season. After Golden State had won 67 games that year and won the championship. You know who the favorites were to win the championship that year in 2015, 2016? The Cleveland Cavaliers. Because it was already known by Vegas that Cleveland had the most talent from top to bottom. It's just that Golden State had a better system for their team, for their roster. They were never a super team. Ever. So this notion that LeBron James had this great upset over Golden State, it's a complete media fallacy. It's a bullshit narrative. And the real question is, why were the Cavaliers down to the Golden State Warriors 3-1 in the first place? Playing against a team with a Steph Curry who had not played well those first 3 games in the first place. He was terrible in those first 3 games. He did not have a good game until Game 4, and Game 4 really was the only good game that Steph had in the entire series, or even approaching a good game. And, all of a sudden, the Cavaliers wake up, they come back, LeBron shows his physical dominance, and it supposedly is this great, unbelievable, shocking upset, and it's not. It's just the fact that Cleveland finally was able to live up to their expectations.
And beat them.
With Kyrie Irving, because Draymond Green got kicked out. And
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And Kyrie Irving averaged 30 points a game the last 3 games of that series, but nobody talks about it. Oh, look at Damon Jones. He's getting roused up like LeBron's wife. How dare you?
And we can argue that all day. With Kyrie Irving,
I love it. I was there. Let me ask you this question. This is what I say to people all the time, okay? They talk about Draymond Green being suspended for Game 5. Mm-hmm. He played Game 6 and 7. We were down 3-1.
They lost their edge.
Why did Draymond get suspended?
3-1.
Hold up. Why did Draymond get suspended?
Because he was an idiot, that's why.
He did something silly.
Who goaded him into it?
LeBron did. Hold on. But tell me, hear me. Tell me outside of Steph and LeBron, somebody who can do what Harden does. Somebody
That's
who
a
can
different argument.
But no,
wait, different argument.
Put him third.
No, right.
Put him.
No, it's not really a different argument, because if we're trying to approximate where somebody ranks when it comes to the NBA's best, or, who brings the most to the table, we have to factor in singular skills. And what Harden does in regards to playmaking, you do have to take that into account. But I understand where both sides are coming from. I will put Harden at 5 right now. If we were to talk about skill set and what a player brings to the table, yes, I would take AD over Harden. I would probably also take Antetokounmpo over Harden. But when it comes to impact, James Harden, because of that 3-point shot, he's just so dynamic.
Right, but those guys, but wait a minute, those guys can also do things that Harden can't do. I mentioned play defense. I mentioned, listen, right now, let me tell you the truth about James Harden.
They defense don't win games the way they score in games.
Spoken like a true loser. Ryan Hollins just said defense does not win games like scoring wins games. Defense always wins games. That's why the teams that win the championship are normally top 5 offensively and defensively in any sport that you can name. If you can't defend, how are you going to win? You have to stop your opponent from scoring.
I take no pleasure in saying this. I really don't. I'm rooting for Harden to succeed.
And why AD had his chances? Since he's so great, Giannis had his chances.
I agree, sir. You should press him on that.
By the way, have a
Playoffs?
great coach build a whole system around AD and give him like Chris Paul and other players who fit the system.
Alvin Gentry didn't build around AD.
Okay.
Are you kidding me right now, man?
Is Alvin Gentry a great head coach?
Alvin Gentry knows offense. He can run on.
Mike D'Antoni's not a great head coach. Alvin Gentry learned under Mike D'Antoni, Max Kellerman. How many championships has Mike D'Antoni won?
He can run offense. Mike D'Antoni ain't no great head coach. He's great on offense.
Thank you, sir.
A disciple, but not the man himself.
Out of control.
Excuse me. James Harden right now, I take no pleasure in saying this, is one of the biggest chokers in the history of American team sports.
Stop
Ryan,
it.
I'm not saying I hope this is true or it'll end the story will end this way. I'm saying if you're telling the story right now, there's no other way to tell it.
Well, one could certainly say that James Harden, if we're going to go by your metrics and your parameters, that he's one of the greatest chokers in American team sports. But then we also have to say the same thing about LeBron James.
Operates at a certain level in the regular season, and that falls way off in the playoffs, and that's been the case since he was the 6th man in OKC. That dude can't be better than everyone.
I could agree with you the year before, but D. Jones, after last year, the way that man defended, playmaking,
got his shots.
Listen, you know how it is. He played the scouting report, and he did his job, yo.
I like James Harden. Okay, don't get me wrong. He's the 6th best player in the league right now.
Which again is a compliment.
It's a compliment. It's not a bad.
Hey, I face the same level of scrutiny when I say that Kobe Bryant is a top 15, top 11 to 15 all-time great player. People think that it's an insult when it's a compliment. With all the thousands of players who've come through professional basketball in the United States, to say that somebody is top 11 to 15, that's not an insult.
Give me somebody better outside of Brian Steph. Name somebody who can.
Kawhi Leonard. When we're talking about Kawhi Leonard, we're talking about somebody who's very potent in the half-court offense and unbelievable on the defensive end. We know that James Harden is not that. I'm looking forward to those matchups between Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. I'm not quite sure if they played one another yet, but I need to see that.
I think we have to leave it there. Everybody's made a case for why they think Harden belongs or why he doesn't belong in the top 5. And I think all of
But anyway, that's basically it on that. Very good debate. Both sides made very cogent points. I'm going to stick to my guns and keep Mr. James Harden at about 5. So anyway, peace.